Right, okay. We left that door open. So.
Yeah, ventilation.
Okay. Right, good evening, everybody. And welcome to the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee here at the South Ribble Borough Council headquarters in Leyland. This is my first meeting of the full committee as chair, and I'm really looking forward to working with you and ensuring we have a strong, effective scrutiny in place for the good of the residents of the borough. I'd like to specifically welcome Lou Jackson. We're delighted that you've joined us, Lou, and we look forward to you being a part of the team. Thank you for joining us. I'd also just like to take this opportunity to wish Charlotte Lynch best wishes. I believe you're leaving us. I don't know how you can do that, but anyway, career development pulls, doesn't it? So and it's a promotion, and I think it's good to get experience working in another major authority. So good for you. Well done for that. And I know you've been helping us now on this committee since 2018. And so I'm sure we've contributed to your career development there by giving you lots of experience, and we wish you well for the future in your new role with, I think it's Manchester City Council. So good luck and best wishes, Charlotte, for that. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with the necessary officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the council website. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. No fire drills are planned, and if the alarm does go off, please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Please turn mobile phones off. Switch off your microphones unless when you're not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. We will now move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. We have received apologies so far from Councillor Collins Sharples, who is being substituted this evening by Councillor Chris Lomax. Thank you, Chris. Are there any other further apologies? No. Okay, we'll move on to item 2. Members are reminded to declare any interests they might have. Do we have any declarations of interest? I'll take Michael Green first. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Could I declare personal interest, please, on item 8, as the County Council via our public health funding funds a lot of the activities in this programme. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Councillor Green. Yeah, Councillor Unsworth.
Yeah, again, item 8, I help out on one of the play schemes as a volunteer.
Good for you as well. Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. Okay. We'll now move on to item 3, minutes of the meeting on Thursday, the 17th of March 2022 of the Scrutiny Committee. Members are asked to approve the minutes for signing by the Chair. Councillor, any comments? I'll start with Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. I was looking for an opportunity to do this, but I think we should pass on our thanks to Councillor Howarth for his previous chairmanship of this committee for the last 3 years, and to welcome you formally as our new chairman, Councillor Turner. Looking forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you for that. That's noted, and thank you very much for the support. Right, so does that mean the minutes are okay for me to sign? Take a vote.
As long as we're nodding.
As long as nobody has any further comments, I'll sign the minutes. Thank you. Right. Moving on to item 4, minutes of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel on Monday, the 21st of March 2022. Members are asked to note the minutes. Noted. Right, thank you. Moving on to item 5, minutes of the scrutiny budget and performance panel on Monday, the 20th of June 2022. Members are asked to note the minutes. Right, okay. Is that okay? No comments, right, thank you. Right, item 6, matters arising from the previous scrutiny committee meeting. It is suggested that members note these recommendations that have now been completed. Okay, but the query the following. So page 15 of item 6, minute 4.4, sorry, master plans. This has been a long-standing issue for the scrutiny committee, and it might be worthwhile to ask that a detailed update be provided to the next meeting. Well, we've discussed that, and the committee has agreed that we want the master plans as an item on the agenda for the next meeting in October. Okay, that's all I have to say. Yeah. Right. Secondly and finally, we've reviewed the employee survey results, and we feel that we need more information that sits underneath the statistics there, which shouldn't be a surprise because some of those stats for the negative responses are quite high. Obviously, there's nobody here tonight to answer specifically on the employee survey results. So again, we will be asking for that to be a specific item on the agenda for the next meeting, which I believe is October. So we'd like that to be provisioned for by the appropriate staff. Thank you. Now, moving on to item 7. Just one moment. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry. There's a number of items I want to bring up on this item. We've made recommendations as a scrutiny committee. They've been accepted, but a significant amount of time has passed and we don't seem to have had a resolution to them. We may not be able to... Yes, page 15, first of all.
Okay.
So the first one I want to raise is minute 4.3. Again, we may not be able to get an answer this evening, although the leader of the council is here, so Councillor Foster may be able to assist us. But we agreed on this July 19, so 3 years ago. And the comment is the intention will be to bring a further report in the new year. I'm just wondering which new year. And where are we actually up to on that one? So that's the first one. I'll go through them all. Turning the page to page 16, minute 36.2. 18 months ago, Scrutiny Committee welcomed the commitment to involve members in developing the transformation strategy. Comment is it's been undertaken. This will include engagement with members. I'm just wondering what is going on that as 18 months have gone by, and transformation strategy is very important for the council. Moving on to page 17, minute 46.5. Committee explores further opportunities to joint scrutiny with Chorley Council. It says this can be included. I'm just wondering whether we are, that's for us as a committee, are we minded to do something along those lines? And finally, at the bottom of that page, that earlier this year, this one, so this is quite a recent one, but further information on use of urgent decisions at our comparator local authorities be provided. Nothing has been provided as yet to members, and that's 4 months ago. So I'm just wondering where we're up to. I don't know if Councillor Foster is able to assist with that.
Right. Can you just hang on a sec, Councillor Foster?
Yeah.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Green. As I would always say to the committee members, if you've got specific questions of detail like this, it is really helpful if you could let us know before the meeting, Chair, because it's much easier to facilitate detailed answers for you then, and accurate answers, which is obviously what we want to provide. A couple of points, Councillor Green. Obviously, the commercialisation of the Civic Centre stopped because of the COVID pandemic. I think we're all aware of that, and all the works that were planned stopped. and we have undertaken recently, I know Councillor Tomlinson's here as the assets portfolio holder. We're in a detailed review of everything now, including Worden, which is close to going to be finished. And there is a plan for a report to come to Cabinet fairly quickly, I think, most certainly this year. Clearly, it will involve the Scrutiny Committee in that when that work's finished. It's not finished yet. And you'll also remember that the assets and the facilities team are becoming part of the shared services now. So this is all part of the report that we're going to bring forward to you. I'm trying to remember the issue of the master plans, Chair, you've mentioned. That's going to be subject into October's meeting. Transformation strategy is ongoing. There has been reports that have come to Cabinet, you'll recall, in the last few months. I know Vicky's just mentioned there, we are planning a member briefing, an all-member briefing on the transformation strategy, where all members can get involved and feed in. The Councillor Green, I'm trying to remember which other specific questions you asked. It might be better, actually, if we just update this, Chair, all of it, and then just provide a detailed update on all of them and refresh this, because it does frustrate me at times that some of the comments are a few months outdated, but we'll do that for your next meeting, or we can even look to write to you separately, actually, in the next week or two.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Foster, that's okay for us. Any other comments? No? Okay, so sorry, I believe Councillor Foster, you want to make a presentation first. So if you do that first, then we'll ask the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and hi, committee. Councillor Bielinski-Gelder sends her personal opinions to you all that she isn't available to make it tonight to present this. This is the cornerstone of her portfolio, but she's got another prior family commitment which has to take priority. So therefore, I'm happily standing in for her. And if I may, Chair, she's provided a short note, which is Councillor Bielinski-Gelder's view of community wealth building. I think it's important that you all have presented this. So, community wealth building isn't simply a list of actions on a strategy or action plan, but rather it is a method to create a cultural shift away from the ideology of neoliberalism, which David Harvey, in his book A Brief History of Neoliberalism, defines a neoliberal state as one which favours individual property rights, the rule of law, and the institutions of freely functioning markets and free trade. I, as in Councillor Bielinski-Gelder, am almost certain many of you recognise this more and more in recent years. This is the ideology which is said to, in theory, to guarantee individual freedoms, which increasingly burden individuals with debts such as student, healthcare and housing. However, Harvey then goes on to illustrate the contradictions in this ideology, where he says neoliberals need to place strong limits on democratic governance, relying instead upon undemocratic and unaccountable institutions, such as the IMF, the World Bank and the Bank of England, to make key decisions, which then creates a paradox of intense state interventions and government by elites and experts in a world where the state is supposed to remain small and not be intervening. The neoliberal state is periodically forced to intervene, sometimes repressively, thus denying the very freedoms it is supposed to uphold. This intervention was witnessed in 2009 to 2011, when the state stepped in to bail out the free market, namely the banks, and impose repressive structural adjustment on the rest of us. We saw our services, the police, healthcare, education, roads, youth provision, social care, etc., cut in order to bail out the free market, which supposedly provides us with freedoms. While free marketeering were criticising the working people for relying on the umbilical cord of state support, the banks in 2009 were filling their pockets for the same umbilical. Community wealth building is in direct response to this ideology and these contradictions, which I have outlined above. Community wealth building is about a new shared culture, where the value of work carried out isn't just in the end product, but in the process itself. The apprenticeships, skills, local economy, and added value of investment in our communities, not just the buildings themselves. The wealth isn't just financial, but it is people's shared futures, their developments as citizens within society, and a shared sense of community ownership and democratic accountability. The culture of cooperation in direct tension with individualism and self-gratification. Unlike Thatcher, who stated, "There is no such thing as a society, only individual men and women," community wealth building is about sharing the rewards of everybody's labour. This doesn't mean everything must be held within the public sector either, or oscillate between public and private sector. There is still a place for a mixed economy of private, public and worker-owner co-ops. The problem is, Chair, there is currently no democratic accountability in the economy. We don't have democratically elected committees to discuss which direction is best for the economy. There is little or no democracy in the local economy, except within the council where we are today. Community wealth building aims to encourage local residents to become worker owners of businesses and cooperatives all over South Ribble. Cooperatives are the best way of challenging the current status quo, challenging the way wealth ends up at the top and challenging the way we understand the system which is exploiting the workers and at the profits for shareholders. Cooperatives, although small, are powerful entities for challenging our understanding of how the economy could run and offer an alternative to the current business models associated with global exploitation. To conclude, Chair, I appreciate that South Ribble may not challenge global markets and a neoliberal philosophy that has been with us since Thatcher announced there is no such thing as society. But we can challenge and help our residents to challenge the default ideology of the last 40 years, which includes national construction frameworks for building our social housing for profit, global corporate businesses collecting our waste for profit, and national corporations managing our leisure centres for profit. We have seen within the community hub models how cooperative models of ownership and democratic decision making by the local people has enabled huge beneficial projects. The peers saying the hub models should be winning awards. Hopefully, this model of local democratic decision making will spread into our much needed food banks and other small businesses around South Ribble, encouraging local people to share our vision of community wealth building. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Right. I'll ask the first question. Please, could you give a brief overview of what is different about community wealth building that would not have happened anyway in South Ribble? Thank you.
I think without the policy of community wealth building, not much of it potentially would have happened. Not a lot of it has happened, Chair, over the last 12 or 14 years, particularly within the procurement policies of the authority, where wealth building into the local supply chain, we're encouraging the use of the local supply chain, local contractors, feeding back that pound into our community's pockets. So there's been a tendency, I call it lazy procurement as well at times, where we sit on the back of national frameworks that use national contractors that have nothing in common with our local community. So there's been substantial changes to our procurement policy where we are really encouraging the use of local businesses, local frameworks, local people earning a decent wage. And additional to that, you've got a separate report there with you, Chair, where there's up to our £8 million worth of social value being added to the local economy as well. But that's particularly in the last 12 months. So I think we're miles ahead of where we would have been. We're certainly miles ahead of where we were.
Thank you for that, Councillor Foster. Councillor Felborn.
I'm sorry, Chair, we're a scrutiny committee. We're not here to politicise speech or embody where we come from or what we do. We're a scrutiny committee for the council. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually fuming because I understand Labour's view, I understand the Liberals' view, and I understand the Conservatives' view. But in this committee, it's bipartisan. We don't make speeches, we just ask questions. I'm actually going to fold my papers up, I'm going to put my stuff in my bag, and I'm going to leave. Because I'm so mad that I'm going to say something wrong.
Right, Councillor Felborn, don't leave. Can you just give me a minute to just ask you to stay? And I'll tell you why. I did feel that it was a political, ideological speech that was just made. I did feel it was inappropriate, parts of it. There was some relevance there, but not all of it. Councillor Foster, can you just please, I agree with part of what you've said, and I perhaps should have stopped the speech, but some of it was relevant, but not all of it, and I agree with you. Can I just please ask you to stay on this one occasion? If you don't mind, give me a break. Because your contribution is valued, and you've said what you've said, and there will be people here in this room that agree with you. And I partly agree with you as well, because it did seem to end up being an ideological speech from the political Labour Party, which I thought parts of it, Councillor Paul, were out of order. But okay, I want you to stay, please, and I owe you. Okay for that. Paul, do you want to come back? Can you make it brief?
Yeah, I will, and I'll respectfully, Chair, disagree, because there was no criticism of any individual political party. I would actually argue the ideological argument here is actually the one that doesn't support community wealth building, because when you look at it, Chair, this is a cornerstone of the administration's corporate priorities, a fair economy that works for all.
Yeah.
And it's really important, I feel, and I completely support Councillor Belinsky-Gelder here, in that you understand the basis of our thinking with this. We're taking the spend away from the big corporates and bringing it in locally. And there was no criticism other than of Mrs. Thatcher, but that's a well-stated statement that Mrs. Thatcher made, but that we disagree with, Chair.
Councillor Foster, not everybody disagrees with some of the ideology and the policies that Prime Minister Thatcher brought in. I'm sorry. Can we just leave that there, because I don't want any members walking out. You said the speech. You said the introduction around community wealth building.
Yeah.
I felt that some of it was political ideology on a global level. And as I say, we've got a scrutiny committee here, and we're dealing with stuff on the agenda. And so that's how. So I'm going to finish it there. I don't want you coming back. Respectfully, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thelborn, for staying. Okay, so I've said what I want to say. Yeah, so we'll now move on. Getting hot here. Councillor Lomax, question 2, please, that you have in front of you. Thank you.
How do we move community wealth building from being a buzzword and a concept to something that's easily understood, makes a difference, and is easily communicated to residents?
Well, we're starting here tonight, Councillor Lomax, aren't we? Because it's a complex, not well understood concept that we're working through. But I think you can already see, it's particularly with some of the appendices that are contained within the report, the dashboards. I know it's something Aniela is really keen to produce, is these dashboards that you see for every major decision that the council makes, the benefit, the social value, the community wealth building element, and the impact it has on our communities. And I also think that the community hubs have a really important place to play here as well with this, in ensuring that our community are aware of it. But for every major procurement that this council undertakes, it has to be looking at that impact that the decisions that we make have on our local community. After all, it is their money, not ours, and they need our support.
Next question is a set of questions that I've got actually around the item on page 90. You've got the case study there of the waste.
Councillor Walton wants to come in.
Sorry, just 1 second. Karen, Councillor Walton.
Excuse me, I have got any voice tonight. So on page 90, a case study of the waste contract insourcing was circulated to follow and provided as a community wealth building project. The council agreed insourcing would be a good idea, a good thing for the service. So please could you talk through it, how it contributes to community wealth building as the same local employee is used? Could you tell us how many agency staff are employed now in the service? And it also goes to say on page 90 about the contributions for pensions. Could you tell me how much contributions the employees now have to pay for their pensions? And reference is also made to the spend going out of the borough. Can this be quantified as the council purchased the refuse wagons and wheelie bins, not from this borough?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So sorry, through you, Chair. So a lot of the answers to your questions are actually within the paper that's been provided. So there's 44 staff that were tutored across full-time equivalents. There's still approximately about 5 or 6 agency staff, I understand, and they have chosen to stay working with the agency for a number of reasons for flexibility. I do not know what the pension contribution of the employees is, Karen, but I'm sure that Vicky and the team will write you with that if that's appropriate to share. But clearly, a 3% employer contribution has gone up to 16.5%, and that's part of the social. That's why that's part of the community wealth building social value, because there's more money into the pockets of our staff. What we're also now in complete control of is the supply chain supporting the waste collection. So as hopefully all the committee know, we cannot buy the refuse vehicles in South Ribble. Although we've got Leyland DAF and Leyland trucks here, that we cannot get those vehicles here. So we get them as close as we can to here through the appropriate framework. But all the spare parts, all the servicing, everything else like that is supplied now through the council's supply chain, which is adding value to this local authority and our local businesses. And the final point I'd make on it, Karen, is the fact that we've increased the pay and increased the terms of conditions for our employees now. Now we've insourced it, and therefore that's, as I said earlier in that earlier speech, that's adding value and more pounds in the pockets of local people, which hopefully they'll go and spend in the local area, which then aids our businesses as well. That's the whole principle of what we're looking to do.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And just look forward to scrutinising the performance of the service in the future. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Trafford.
Thank you, Chair. Evening. As we've just heard, that a lot of the sort of community wealth building model is based in a lot of history. So what I'm asking is, how are we testing that this holds up in the modern world? So some things that are very, very relevant in the current economic climate would be the effects of the war in Ukraine, the effects of Brexit, the cost of living crisis, the potential of a new financial crash, the potential of the housing market crashing, and then also, of course, recovering from COVID. And those things aren't mentioned within here. So what I'm asking, are we risk assessing on these things? And if so, how do we adapt? Should we feel the worst from these factors as well?
Cheers, Matt. The really good question, because a lot of it, as you know, is we have to be flexible and maintain flexibility at all times. So in all the main procurement, every piece of main procurement that the council does, there is impact assessments that are undertaken. But clearly, we're having to be exceptionally flexible around that, though, because there's only so much influence, Matt, that we can have on these. But we also are acutely aware of the potential negative impact that could have on the council services and the individuals that work within us. We've been advised in the last week that we've discussed before, construction inflation has been hampering us big time on all the major procurement construction projects. That is levelling off now, it appears. And so that's being de-risked. But I know the officers acutely every week at times are looking at all the risks, they're managing the risks, and we're trying to do the best we can within the structures that we have within the authority. But you're absolutely right to bring it up, because they are huge impacts, negative impacts across all our society. And what we have to be able to do, Matt, and willing to do, is support our community when they need it. And unfortunately, a lot of that is around cash. And so we need to be demanding more money from government as well to support the communities, but it's flexibility, mate, ultimately.
Okay, right. So with regards to page 90, the background, A to C, my challenge is the decision not market driven? It is currently a seller's market, whereas 7 years ago it was a buyer's market. The waste contract was offered at a heavily discounted price, whereas now it is back on competitive terms. The second part of the question is, should market forces change again, how do you intend to secure best value?
Thanks, Chair. And this is, I'm trying not to get into an ideological debate, but my view, the leader of the council, is that I cannot see any circumstance where the private sector can deliver public services any better than the public sector can, because the private sector has to make a profit. And I'm not criticising that. That's what the private sector is there to do, is make profit for its shareholders. But it shouldn't be, in my view, at the expense of the taxpayer and the provision of public services. Therefore, I would strongly argue that if there are any pressures on anything that we provide, the best and most appropriate people to deal with that is us. Because we're not under the pressure to cut costs, to provide profit. We're there to provide the service, and we can provide that service. And I think it was Councillor Walton just mentioned before, she was looking forward to the stats on the waste since we brought it in-house. I'm really pleased to tell you the performance is exactly as good as it was when it was part of FCC, and it will continue to be the case. So I think that actually insourcing, Chair, always provides this council and our local community with the maximum flexibility to deal with any of the challenges that we face, because we face a lot of challenges coming up in the future.
Okay. How is the waste contract an example of community wealth building? Do you have any evidence of where the operatives live, and if the improved terms will lead to an increased spend in the local economy, or is just this speculation?
We know where they all live. We can get the stats, and the fact of the matter is, Chair, they're all on better terms and conditions, more pay, higher pensions, and we are now in complete control of the supply chain that supports that sector. But we'll get details. We've got all the postcodes and details, but we'll provide that actual data and information for you as a committee.
Okay, turning to the third section of this report on page 90. It refers to opportunities and increased revenue. It's probably linked in with what Councillor Treffer said now. Why is there no mention of increased risk? Fuel costs, replacement plant and vehicles, inflation, sourcing manpower?
Thanks, Chair, because the report isn't about the insourcing as a whole. The report is provided here for the specific benefits of the community wealth building impact, the social value. The wider context, if you remember, for the insourcing of waste was in much detail provided at council, at cabinet and council when that was provided. This is purely as a case study for the social value benefits that the insourcing decision of council has made. So that's why the paper is presented in that way.
Okay, so the report is actually static at a snapshot in time, right? But it is a snapshot in time.
Yeah, and you'll get as when I sit in front of you with the corporate performance monitoring reports 4 times a year. Clearly the insourcing of the waste, the insourcing of the leisure will form part of those reports, and you can have a much deeper dive into the wider elements that you've discussed, Chair.
Yeah, and it'll probably track market forces then. So we'll see how it goes, because we seem to be living in unstable times. Okay, still on page 90, paragraph 4, section 4. It's in-house waste collection may well have operational benefits, but how does any of that generate community wealth building?
Because if it's generating benefits for our community and it's generating benefits for us, then there's a social value to it.
Okay, so you're going back to the fact that I suppose, the transfer of staff from private industry to public sector and having better terms and conditions is part of that operational benefit.
It is, and also I didn't really answer it in full last time because you mentioned the commercial services. Now we can expand with any expansion that we can make to this service as well, and a particular look at the commercial collections of waste. South Ribble Borough Council doesn't necessarily collect that much commercial waste within our borough. If we can expand that, then all the benefit of that, we could do a cost sharing exercise with our local businesses, for example, and we could share then any upside or profit with our local communities. So there's great opportunities, we feel, in the expansion of the services as well, and that's when it kicks in for our community.
Okay. Still strongly feel, okay, this report doesn't address it, but there are business risks associated to all the operational transactions within this. The running of the setup, which perhaps will appear on the risk register for the council or are on already. Yeah, okay, well, maybe the governance committee members can look at that. Okay, final question. How is the council coming along with securing support from major industry such as Leyland Trucks, BA Systems, etc.? What influence are you having on major industry in the borough? And can you demonstrate it with regard to community wealth building?
Yes, so all our major businesses are all signed up through the South Ribble and Chorley partnership to this type of community wealth building and social value. And I can mention one. I don't know if I should mention. There's a contractor, main construction contractor that we're working with in partnership, who has significantly improved their social value offering to move away from the standard, if you like, the Tom's method of they'll do 1.5 apprenticeships and they'll do this, they'll do that, but to add in real value to the local supply chain on the back of one of our major projects. And you've seen that in the appendix there, Chair, where it's about 6 million quid we reckon will be funneled back into our local economy. We speak to BAE Systems, we speak to the NHS. It's a piece of work that Vicky and I are really keen to progress, and we do that through the partnership with Chorley and our other key stakeholders.
Right, okay. Councillor Trafford.
Thanks, Chair. So something where I think I'd benefit from clarity on is, on the one hand, we've been discussing issues around bringing services in-house, and then there again, we're then talking on quite a large reliance from the private sector, which is autonomous in itself. So what I'm asking is, where's our leverage to, when we're negotiating with the private sector, to encourage them to come on board with a community wealth building model? Where's our leverage to encourage them to do that? Because I understand Preston Council has adopted a very similar model, and they had a public dispute with one of their anchor institutions, being UCLAN, over them not paying the living wage. So where's our leverage to prevent that from happening here and to encourage them to come on board?
Chair, thanks, Matthew. Very good question again. So it's through our procurement policies of the council, which have been changed, and so there are certain parameters that must be met. Matt, for example, we will not do business on our new contracts with any supplier that doesn't pay the national living wage, as an example. That's all written into our procurement policies now. You'll also recall there's a minimum of 15% social value from our major construction contracts that must be achieved as well. And I'll remind the committee, that's a minimum. That's an absolute minimum. So what we have to do is very much like planning, where there's a 30% provision for affordable homes. And if the developer doesn't meet that parameter, then the developer doesn't work with us. And it's the same with the procurement. We've got a lot of, that is where our control is. We can select the frameworks, a lot of national frameworks now, Matt, and regional frameworks that are putting community wealth building and social value as a priority as well, as much as cost and quality. So that's what we do. It's through our procurement policies that we've adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Trafford again.
Yeah.
Next question. Is it not Councillor Trafford? Sorry. Trafford, it's Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Page 33, paragraph 4, reference is made to the community wealth building concept achieving measurable economic benefits for residents. What are these benefits and how are they measured, and when will we be able to see them?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Matt. So as part of the pack you've got the TOMS report there that details all the social value that associated with the procurements and the contracts that we've let. That's one element. It's maybe not the best, but also you'll notice, Matt, there's some, as I mentioned earlier, some dashboards that have been provided. And I know that, as I say, Councillor Belinsky-Gelder is really keen to see that as part of every project report that comes forward, that these dashboards are provided and it gives clear, accurate information on the benefits to our local communities through the procurement or through the project. And so it is a little bit of work in progress, because you'll see it's quite fragmented how it's been presented to you tonight, but that's all been pulled together, and we're hoping in the next month or two it's in a quite concise dashboard that you'll be able to readily understand, and would welcome your scrutiny of that as well.
Councillor Felborn, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Foster. Page 34, paragraph 6. The report states that the community wealth building is embedded within the council's processes, and is quite bold to say it is in the, I'll have to change my page, sorry, council's culture. What evidence is there that this is the case?
Thanks, Chair. So I'd take you back to the previous answer that I gave to Councillor Trafford as well, is the fact that we've actually, Cabinet, the Executive and Council, we have changed our policies. We've formally changed our policies. Therefore, if the policies of the council have changed recently, then the culture of the council has changed as well, because it is down to the officers to work within the guidelines that the executive set and the policies that we've agreed upon and adopted. And I think just the very fact that the scrutiny committee is sat here tonight as well, scrutinising heavily community wealth building, that means to me that it is embedded and part of the process of the delivery of the council. As the more work to do, of course, there is. It's a relatively new concept, but it's something that we're really proud of.
Yeah.
With it being a new concept, has there any risk been identified and planned out?
Yeah, Chair. So there's risk in everything, isn't there? And we look carefully at this when, particularly in the major procurements, because what we've got to be careful of is that the community wealth building and the social value demands don't make a project undeliverable financially as well. So what that means, what we must do is work with the right contractors in the right way, and with the right philosophy of the contractor as well, because what we've also noticed is there has been a sea change in the attitude of construction contractors towards this, where they see the real value and benefits of the community wealth building, this particular social value. So yes, there's always risk, but it's a managed risk, and it's a risk that we review in line with every other risk that the council faces.
Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Councillor Felborn. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Page 35, paragraph 8, in relation to business engagement. What has the response been from business, and how are you targeting the businesses who don't generally engage with the council?
Thanks, Chair. Again, a relatively positive response, Will. I say that because it's not universally, nothing's ever universally positive responded to, because again, it's part of the education that we have with our local businesses in them adopting our policies. But what we found, due to the pandemic, we are closer to our local businesses than we've ever been before. And there's an awful lot of our local businesses that actually buy into the concept of community wealth building after what the community has been through, and how the businesses themselves have been supported through the pandemic by us and by you. And so we do it through the partnership with Councillor Jay Flannery, does it through the business support work that he does as part of his portfolio. Councillor Belinsky-Gelder does it through her portfolio when we engage, and it really is a top priority, and it's quite refreshing to be honest with you, Will, how many people are buying in to the whole community wealth building process and the social value, and we championing it, and we've actually shared some of our procurement policies with other businesses and partners and stakeholders, and they're trying to adopt it. Because just before I bring Vicky in, because you've got to remember that, businesses want to work with us. And therefore, they understand now if they want to work with us, then they have to work within the guidelines and the processes and the parameters that we're setting. And we've moved on. And so they have no option ultimately that if they want to earn money and work with us, then they have to adopt our policies. And so it's been very, very positive, to be fair. I don't know, Vicky, have I missed anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add, thank you, Chair. It was we are part of a bigger partnership of organisations as well who were moving forward the social value kind of principles. So with the NHS and training providers, UCLan, Runshall College, so some of the big anchor institutions. And I think by having that sort of groundswell of commitment to it, it will influence businesses that actually a lot of the bigger organisations within the area are talking the same language now and have a similar expectation. So through that arrangement, of course, we're continually learning and we look to wider networks and regional networks for best practice about community wealth building, social value, and to help us understand those risks as well. That partnership is providing, really good kind of commitment for the broader principles, and it means that businesses do recognise the terminology and the intent when we go to speak with them.
Right, thank you for that. Just ask a quick question. When you say the partnership, does it have a recognised title? What?
So the South Ribble and Chorley partnership is the recognised partnership,
okay.
but we're also that's the one.
Councillor Carol Walton, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, concerns paragraph 10 on page 36. We are now embedded into the Preston Anchor Network, which is Preston is a place leader promoting the concept of implementing community wealth building to other anchor institutions in and around Preston and to the private sector. So have we got any examples or figures that are available from Preston to the success of what they've been doing in Preston? And will the focus be on wealth building creation and investment in South Ribble? And how will our interests be protected if we are working with such a wide variety of institutions?
Thanks, Chair. So, Karen, again, really good question, because obviously you'll notice I've deliberately not mentioned the Preston model yet. I know Matthew did, but they were first on this. Then they moved quickly a number of years ago, and that's been in the national media and even overseas, internationally, where that's been adopted by a number of public sector bodies. But ours is different, Karen. What we've done, the Anchor Network is working together with Preston and with other organisations for best practice. That's all we're looking to do there is best practice. And to be fair, South Ribble's done an awful lot. We've done an awful lot with moving forward with our own policies, our own values, because we're in a good position within Central Lancashire where we've got an awful lot going on at the moment as well. So we've learned some very good practices from our colleagues and friends in Preston, and Preston have taken away some of the practices that we've developed as well, and working together. You just can't get away. There's a river between Preston and South Ribble, but that doesn't mean that the communities absolutely recognise that as a boundary. We're working with Chorley, as you know, we're working with West Lancs, and we work wider within the Lancashire footprint as well. So yeah, best practice, trying to deliver the most value.
Councillor Felborn, I'll take your query.
Why now to join the network, and how will this improve our service provision? Why now to join the network, and how will this improve our service provision?
Sorry, Chair, I don't fully understand the question, but what we do, Stephen, is any networks that are local to us or even regional to us, we link in with, particularly through the partnerships. We don't want to keep reinventing the wheel, and we want best practice. So as this is the community wealth building is a cornerstone for the administration moving forward, we're tied in with as many networks as we possibly can to learn. And as I say, it's predominantly through the South Ribble and Chorley partnership that we're working. But clearly there's political links as well between Preston and Chorley and South Ribble and other councils, and all the procurement officers themselves, they have their own networking as well. And we're just trying to learn best practice. And government keeps changing the rules and regulations anyway, that we have to make sure that we apply with.
All right. Okay, you're welcome. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Chair. The same paragraph, same page, same paragraph. You talk about the local cooperative, you're looking to support local cooperatives. I just wondered what the current situation is in that, and whether they're going to be council or community-led, a mixture of both.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Kath. Wherever possible, they need to be community-led. We don't want the council to be leading these cooperatives. We want the council to be supporting the cooperatives leading themselves, because that's what it's all about. And you'll know as well, Kath, that again, we mentioned procurement policies quite a lot today. The policy is inviting invitations and expressions of interest from cooperatives locally. And I know that the expressions of interest, for example, for Word and Hall are out now, and a cornerstone of the new tenancies that we're looking at are community-led cooperatives. So hopefully we may get some positive feedback and some positive news for you all in the coming weeks, because we're just finalising that now.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a supplementary to that? Is there going to be a register of the local cooperatives that are emerging as a result of council policy, so that we can actually demonstrate evidence of the type and shape and size of the local cooperatives within South Ribble?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Right, we'll look forward to seeing that. Thank you. Next is Councillor Trafford.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that's mentioned early on, and sorry to go back a little bit, it mentions around protection of land. And one of the things that community wealth building does, it allows us to protect land. So I was going to ask the leader if he feels that the current two-tier organisation of local government is actually a barrier in achieving that, when you have two different councils that own different areas of land wanting to do different things with them. And if that sort of leaves South Ribble in almost sort of an identity crisis, where it's been pulled in two different directions, where it's quite hard to have sort of consistent economic development because of that.
Yes, because and I think we're referring to here, Matt, is there's a lot of land owned by Lancashire County Council, where this is what we need to strive though together, is to ensure that the planning policies of this authority are appropriate, to ensure that any development that is undertaken within South Ribble's boundary is undertaken appropriately. But at the end of the day, Homes England, for example, it's not just the two-tier system that we have. Homes England, which is a public body, believe it or not, works against local authorities at times with developments, which I find astonishing. So the two-tier system is challenging, but what we do try to do, Matt, is work as cooperatively as we can, because we are the planning authority, and so they can't just do what they want on these sites. But no, the simple answer to your question is it is a challenge at times, yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay with that. So next we have Councillor Buttery. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Page 36, paragraph 11. Many of the next steps appear to be top down in the council, going to others for them to do community wealth building. What is being done to develop and have a bottom-up approach?
Thanks, Chair. I'd actually disagree, Julie. I think it is bottom-up. I think everything about community wealth building and the inclusion of social value is bottom-up. That's what it's all about. It's about our communities. What we're doing now is facilitating and closing out on some of these major procurement exercises that the council's undertaking, and we're ensuring that what is being delivered is appropriate and has been commercially agreed between all parties. And so because of the pandemic, we were slowed down, as everyone's aware, but the pandemic isn't as challenging as it was, and it's the government has dictated it's business as usual now. So we're getting on with delivering a number of significant projects. So what we have to be ensured and confident that they're being dealt with appropriately, and that's what we're doing now. And it's getting the toolkits, as it says in the next steps, and the strategies right to ensure that these are delivered appropriately. But I would disagree. It's top down. It's ensuring that the bottom up is retained.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Foster, on page 37, paragraph 13, it sets out there's a current level of reserves which stand at 150,000 for community wealth building. What is this going to be spent on, please? And how are we going to ensure value for money?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Michael. Everything we do, as you know, Michael, is we ensure there's value for money. And, as the committee is aware, we've had a clean bill of health with our value for money conclusions in the last 12 months and a very positive response from our external auditors. Those sums of money, I don't think are allocated against any specific projects just yet. However, I will ask Councillor Bielinski-Gelder to write to you in the committee and just give you an indication of what they may be getting spent on in the next month.
Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say we do have a dedicated community wealth building officer as well, who has the job of pulling all of these different bits of the jigsaw together. So David is here tonight, and David is working on both the community level projects in terms of how we do the bottom up work, but then also facilitates the work through the partnership as well, to bring networks together, to gather best practice, and to help us to develop our agenda as we go forward. So he's also worked a lot on the internal culture, training materials and policy development. So there is that resource as well that will at some point be allocated from within that budget as well. And that budget provides capacity for that role to deliver activity aligned to this agenda. So that we can confirm that, definitely.
Right, okay, we'll look forward to that information. Next is Councillor Coulton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Page 39 discusses the differences between the traditional approach and the community wealth building approach, and the differences are quite marked. Would a more central approach, not, middle of the way approach, not give us some benefits from both traditional and the community wealth building approach?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Colin. You're perhaps right. This is we have where we want to get to. We have where we have been, and clearly there's going to be a transition across the two. And it may well be that with some of the procurement, with some of the delivery of our services that we have currently, that we are going to have to have some sort of interim approach to it to get to where we want to go to. This will not just be done overnight. We do have a journey to go upon. So it may well be that there is a halfway house, so to speak, but ultimately it's the policy of the council to deliver the community wealth building strategy, which is as stated.
Certainly, yeah. Please, Councillor.
I mean, from a permanent point of view, there are obviously advantages from the traditional approach where you're involved in, it makes big business and whatever. And also there are real advantages from the community wealth building approach. So I'm thinking, the central approach, you get some advantage from the big business approach, but also you get the advantages of the community wealth building approach.
Thanks, Chair. I understand what you're saying, Colin, but I think that, if you look, one of the areas that we really do want to improve upon and develop is the introduction of cooperatives across the board. And you couldn't have a halfway house when it comes to the delivery of a cooperative, because it just wouldn't work. And, when we're talking about keeping the wealth within the community, and that's the shared amongst the people that own the community, that own that cooperative, that's contrasting your multinational that's taking wealth out, delivering the same services for the profit of shareholders. And I can't see a comfortable halfway house with that example and where we're going with our community wealth building. Yes, there's the social value side, but you'll have seen, hopefully, from the papers that have been presented, the development of the cooperative policy and structure is really important to us. And I don't see a natural halfway house with that, unfortunately. You either have a cooperative delivery methodology or you have a more traditional private sector delivery. And I think they don't complement one another.
Right, Colin. Okay, Councillor Will Adams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think there could be a strong argument. I know many of my residents probably would say the same in terms of the traditional approach not really working for them. And with the, with the cost of living crisis that we face and the, the reduction in the standards of living, do you think that, a change of approach is strengthened by these recent events?
Thanks, Chair. I do, and again, I'm trying not to be in any way ideological, but the current system doesn't work, Will. I just don't understand how with the cost of living crisis, where we've got utility companies making huge profits at the expense of a community that can't afford to pay the bills. It doesn't stack up for me, and I noted, and the committee may be interested to know that EDF in France was nationalised last week by the French government because of that very reason, because they couldn't see, this is maybe what you were saying, Colin, about how these competing factors, but you can't, I can't see, for example, utilities and the cost of living crisis and the cost of utilities. How is it right that there are still institutions profiting hugely during this period? I don't get it. So I think society, and I think government themselves, and they've mentioned this, the Conservative government, that something has to change, because fundamentally it can't go on. It doesn't work. It's broken. So I think that by championing this locally, I think you'll find that we're slightly ahead of the curve, Will, with a lot of this, and particularly if there's a change of government.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Unsworth, 39. Sorry, 12, page 39. Thank you.
Yeah, at the bottom line where it mentions the banking, and we wondered whether there are any implications for the pension fund in the model such as this. I'm aware that Lancashire County Council operate our pension fund, but we just wondered whether there was any way we can influence how they invest the money.
Thanks, Chair. The answer is yes. I was on the pension for Lancashire County Pension Fund up until, if you remember, May. Kath, I'm no longer on it, but the social value element of the pension investments is being looked at closely, and it's something that across the board a lot of the pension funds are looking at. Particularly, you'll have heard historically, and you'll obviously be aware that the de-investing in carbon, the pension funds, and they're looking at more social value type projects to invest in. And so predominantly it's managed by Lancashire County Council, but there are, it's up to us as district councils, which are all members of the fund, to influence the policies of that pension and any pension fund, to be honest with you. But again, this is what, on Will's question earlier, it's for us to influence and change now. And I think society is ripe for it, Kath, personally.
Sorry, can I just ask, so we have some representation on there now you've left?
Yeah, so sorry, Chair, it's the district councils do. Yeah, so Lancashire district leaders have 2 places, I think it is, Michael, isn't it? It's 2 places on the pension committee. And they represent I think one's Councillor David Borrow, actually from Preston, is one of the members. And I think the other member is a member from Hindburn, but I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a query, really. It's on the quarter four performance monitoring report. It was noted that a number of the new savers had fallen from 47 in quarter 3 to 15 in quarter 4. And the first 2 quarters there was an average of 44 new savers for the credit union. So what is being done to increase the benefits and the number of new savers to the credit unions in the future?
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Karen. Sorry about that. I was just getting some confirmation. There was you're not going to believe this, but there was a really bad leak within the credit union, within the pipework, which impacted on its availability, but also COVID as well. But it's the officers are on top of this now, and we're pushing hard to get to the levels where we need to be. And again, that'll be in the corporate performance report for you to scrutinise in the coming weeks.
Right, thank you. I'll now ask if any members not on the committee have any questions. Nope. I think I can confirm there are no members of the public here. Darren, could you please formulate the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from the discussion this evening that the committee might like to consider with regards to recommendations. The committee thanks the leader and director for attending and answering questions. The committee welcomes the plans to promote community wealth building as a concept with partners, businesses and residents. The community wealth building model be reviewed in light of the changing and increasing challenges affecting the borough and our residents to ensure it is adaptable and continues to be best practice. The committee looks forward to a list of cooperatives in South Ribble being provided. The committee is grateful for further information being offered on the spend with regards to the £150,000 allocated in council reserves. And the committee asks that the council lobbies the LCC pension fund to adopt community wealth building principles. Thank you, Chair.
Are the committee happy with the recommendations? Yeah, I'll take it in a minute. Just one sec. I'll just take the query from Councillor Green, and then it would appear there's a member not on the committee who wants to raise a question. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of those recommendations that I wish to query. So there was one in there about welcoming the promotion of community wealth building. I'm not quite sure what we mean by that, but will cause me some concern, and I have some concern over the last recommendation about advising the pension fund on what they should do.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Yeah, any other further comments from the committee on that? Councillor Adams, and then I'll take a question from Councillor Lomax.
Yeah, no, I'd support the recommendations, to be honest. I think particularly with in relation to the pension fund, I think it's important we have further discussions about pension funds and the, their potential to support decarbonisation in terms of our green agenda. We should all be supporting that in line with the evidence that's before us. So I would support those recommendations in full. Thank you.
Councillor Lomax.
Basically, I'm mirroring what my friend is saying by my side. Yeah, we need to lobby for the money to be spent in the right areas, and that in fact does mean within Lancashire as well, because there is certain amounts of how they distribute the money with it, and I know they should be spending a set amount within the local area. And it's 5 years ago when I had the conversations with the trade union member who sits on the board, who was saying that they weren't spending the money on infrastructure such as electricity and gas within this area. So that actually does need changing to help decarbonise and also put money into the local economy. So I would support that.
Right. Okay. So can you just read out the recommendation that we're debating where we seem to have?
Yeah, there was two that were queries, and obviously we can reword, and we're in the hands of the committee. The committee welcomes the plans to promote the community wealth building concept with partners, businesses and residents. The final one was also that the committee asked the council to lobby the Lancashire County Council Pension Fund to adopt community wealth building principles.
Okay, I'll just bring in Councillor Trafford.
In the spirit of objectivity, could I please ask Councillor Green to tell us what his concerns are? Because he might actually have a really good argument that I haven't heard for why we shouldn't adopt those. Because all I've heard is he's got an issue with them, but not what the issue is. With the greatest respect.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. I've got a fundamental issue with community wealth building in general, if I'm being completely honest, and the diatribe that we had at the beginning highlighted that perfectly. But that being the case, Mr. Cranshaw has highlighted the first recommendation. I think that makes more sense having listened to it again. So I'm happy to go with the majority if the majority of the committee wish to support that. The one about the pension fund, I'm concerned because I don't know, so forgive me if I'm causing any offence to anyone, but as far as I know, none of us are experts on these matters around the table. And the trustees and those who sit on the pension committee, and I've certainly not sat on it for about 12 years, but they are experts, and we need to allow them to consider everything in the round and make sure they are getting the best returns, for the people who benefit from those pensions, and across the board. I mean, some of the points which Councillor Adams has raised about the environment and so on, I would wholeheartedly agree with, and I'm sure most of us would do. But I think it just needs to be softened up. But the word lobbying the pension fund to make changes and implementing community wealth building as a basis for determining where pensions are invested causes me some concern. So if there's a softening of the wording, that may well be helpful.
Chair, if it helps, would it be that the council encourages the Lancashire County Council Pension Fund to adopt community wealth building principles? Does that soften it enough?
I think it encourages them to consider, may well do.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I don't want to get into an ideological debate here, but let's be honest. In terms of what goes on down in Westminster in terms of lobbying, I think us lobbying for a better or more just pension scheme. I don't think I can't really see the logic of maybe not doing that. You know, in terms of, we've all seen the news, we've all seen what lobbying goes down Westminster and how unjust a lot of that is. I think lobbying for a better pension scheme which benefits residents in our local community, I don't think is too far gone. Thank you.
Just 1 second, please, Paul. Councillor Tomlinson, did you want to come in?
Just
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I think having just come off the committee, I can confirm that they actually do like being lobbied. They really do encourage engagement from the key stakeholders and partners, because I know you mentioned it's about returns, Councillor Green, but it's not all about returns. And there's most significantly certain elements that and sectors that provide high returns that socially are not acceptable to invest in. And that's what this is about. It's about the social investment as well. So I can confirm to you, Chair, they do encourage lobbying from all the strategic partners.
Councillor Martin. Sorry. Councillor Martin, sorry, can you come to the microphone at the end where Councillor Coulton is, and just, Councillor Coulton, if you can just put the microphone on, please. Don't bring your chair. You're not going to be sat down for hours talking to us about this. Well, you've got 5 minutes.
5, okay. I take issue. I wouldn't take issue with about expertise on the panel, the pensions panel, because they are all councillors and they're the same as us. But I would like to say that we pay money as a council into that pension fund, and we should have a right to say how it's invested, or at least have the right to suggest how it's spent and invested. Because at the moment, sometimes, even though we did bring up a few years ago about it being invested in the fracking industry, and we later found out that it's actually invested in the oil and gas industry in America, which is not the place where we want our money to go, I don't think, is for some people. So I think we do have the right to lobby, simply because we are stakeholders, and this council pays a good proportion of money into that pension, and we have a right to, I think this council has a right to suggest that it be divested away from corporate gain and into more public gain in this community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your contribution, Councillor Martin. I'm going to ask the officer, Darren, to read out a slightly revised wording for you to consider, please. So hopefully we can get some consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the wording might be, and obviously the Scrutiny Committee makes a recommendation to the Cabinet, and the Cabinet may respond in a positive way or negative way, or strengthen or bolster as they see fit. So just to put it into that context tonight, really. So the potential recommendation based on what members have suggested is that the committee ask the Council to encourage the LCC Pension Fund Committee to consider adopting community wealth building principles.
Right, everyone, do we have a consensus on that revised wording?
Do we not have another recommendation as well that we're debating?
I don't know, Matthew.
Was there not a second one as well?
I'm taking
Sorry.
my guidance from the officer.
I think that Councillor Green conceded and there was consensus that that first recommendation wording was acceptable to the committee. We can, which just left the pension fund matter.
Right, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I think we're all broadly in agreement, aren't we, that we would like them to basically revisit what they are doing and see if there's a better way of doing it. On that basis, and in the interest of taking things forward, I'm happy to accept that amended wording, and I'm comforted by the fact that Councillor Tomlinson is on that committee now and can raise these issues as well as a member, which will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Green. I'm now going to ask if everybody is happy with that revised wording. Right. Thank you for saying that. Okay, we are now moving on to item 8.
Yes.
We're now moving on to item 8.
Councillor Foster's remaining for this item.
Okay. Councillor Foster, you're remaining for this item.
So, Chair, I was going to state Councillor Tidlington sends his apologies, so I'm just hang on. That's okay.
Is he turning up?
No. I'm substituting for him, Chair.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
I was just wondering what I was hanging on for then. Have I missed something?
Sorry, no, we've got the HAF programme, which is Councillor Tidlington's portfolio. Yeah.
Would you like me to introduce the report?
Right. Okay. If you would like to say a few words before moving on to questions.
Right, okay, so I'll introduce the report. I'll be as quick as I can because I understand about timing. So as you can see, this is a report on the HAF programme. So last year's HAF and then coming up this year's HAF as well. So as you understand the background, we got some funding through from the Department of Education. It came via LCC, and the programme was to ultimately is to keep children healthy over the summer, to keep children active, to provide enriching activities for resilience, character building, but also to keep them safe and encourage make sure they're not socially isolated. So there was quite strict limits on what we needed to do. We needed to make sure there was provision for 30% of people who were on free school meals. So we had quite a lot of data from county to support that. I think where we differed as a local authority compared to other local authorities in Lancashire is that we didn't commission services, as in we didn't contract out this provision, and we decided to deliver it ourselves. And a bit similar to the last item, we wanted to try and use this to support community and community infrastructure. So it was very different from just contracting out to a company. Is what we did was we tried to use the community assets that we had in the district to run activities in them. So we used community assets from local boxing clubs to local community groups to local sports clubs to try and keep those activities using the leisure local principles that we had in council and cabinet, that we did it all over the district in local areas, but also to support community groups to deliver themselves. So some of these community groups had never delivered activities like this before. So we supported them with their safeguarding, we supported them health and safety, and all the ways to help and support run that. The scheme was, I can't underestimate how successful this scheme has been. I think from the community and the support the community's given, but also from our own leisure centres. Our own leisure centres during the summer have been packed out with kids from the HAF programme. And as you can see from the report that we've attached, parents have been extremely appreciative of it. The community groups that have been involved have been very supportive of it. And also we've trained quite a number of young people who've supported this programme. So through summer programme, we've had a lot of apprentices, a lot of young coaches that have been involved in this programme. Part of our active health throughout the year, we've been using young people as future leaders. So we've been able to employ them again on this programme, which has been a really good support for them. So you can see where the places have gone. You can see our programme that we've had for last year and the programme for this year. It's all over the district. And I've just got some really recent data. So our HAF programme for the summer was released not last week, the week before. We've already had 1,512 bookings on that programme. The tennis centre has been extremely popular and it still stays popular. We've got a real gender split, 50-50. So that's excellent. And the age groups really, as I say, the age group is from 5 to 16. Generally, we're attracting 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12-year-olds onto the programme. But we are trying to encourage older kids to get involved by doing some activities in the park. We've introduced new activities like bicycle repair and a lot more active repair, bicycle and cycle work. And in addition to that, we've been concentrating on our SEND provision. So what we're doing is we're very much catering for our SEND provision on a case-by-case basis. So we've put additional SEND activities on, so quiet sessions for people for SEND children and their families, but also we're able to be flexible by if they want to, for example, join a swim programme but they don't want to be in with all the kids. So we can also provide, timetable swim passes for them. And we're working with Bernardo's and others to try and do specific activities on a one-to-one basis for children with SEND provision needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that report. That's excellent. It's a good news item. This. I'll ask the first question. The feedback included in the report is fantastic. What's been learned in the first year of the programme for future years? And you can just pick some highlights. Obviously, not a long list of. I'm sure there are lots of things that you learned, but if you've got some highlighted bullet points, if you could just take us through a couple of those, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think the major one is that of demand. There's a huge demand, and clearly, as Jen said earlier, this is targeted in the first instance for those children on free school meals, but we all know, don't we, it's particularly the situation we find ourselves in. It's those families that might not necessarily be on free school meals who are working hard, who are being massively impacted as well, Chair. And so I know Jen didn't say it, but I think it is mentioned within the report somewhere that there's a policy of the executive and of council that we won't turn any child away. And that therefore there's, using our holiday hunger programme, Chair, that you'll be aware of, we may need to supplement it. But I think that one of the biggest learnings was the huge demand.
Yeah, and I think we all know that kids on free school meals don't necessarily have other friends on free school meals. So we wanted to make sure that, they're going to come with the friends, whether on free school meals or they're not. So that's what we tried tried to do with the programme. So obviously it is focused on kids with free school meals, but we won't turn kids away.
Right, excellent. I like that inclusivity. So, Councillor Thelborn, and then Will, you're on next. Councillor Thelborn.
Thank you, Chair. Like the whole idea, I totally support it. Read all the feedback, but has there been any negative feedback, and how has this been dealt with?
Suppose before Jen comes in, it goes back to demand, Stephen. And it was, I think originally there was some confusion last year, wasn't there, about because we'd publicised the government policy about the free school meals, things like that there was some confusion around those children, could they attend that weren't necessarily qualified, or as Jen said, so we've improved the comms on that to make it clear that nobody will be turned away. I think that was one of the major issues, Jen, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the booking system as well. So what we're now using is a different booking system. So everything is bookable online if you want to book it online, but people can also phone up and book it through the gateway system. But everything is accessible on a timetable if you go on the website. So it is a lot easier. But also for us, we can get a lot better quality data now. So we'll be able to get data for obviously the numbers of bookings, but where they come from, which schools they go to, age groups, all sorts of different data that we can use. And we've also going to be able to, and we obviously ask their permission to be able to use the email addresses for other activities that the council's putting on outside of HAF programme as well. So that's an improvement to the service.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thelborn. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. How sustainable is the programme should the government and LCC not provide the funding? And in this case, if the funding was withdrawn, what would we do?
Yeah, so it's thanks, Chair and Will. There's 3 years of funding that's been secured from the government. So in the short term, it's safe. But do remember we had this holiday hunger programme that we've already got in place as a council as well. And I think just ultimately we have to find the resources to make sure that this happens. We can't have any kid in our borough ever going hungry in holidays, ever going hungry ever, to be fair. So somehow we have a duty as a society, as a council, to ensure that this continues. So short term, we've got the funding. Medium term, we need to make sure that we've secured the funding.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Coulton.
How confident are you that you're reaching all the young people and the families that, really need this service? And how difficult are you finding it to reach the people that actually need it?
Well, we send out the details to all the schools. So we're part of the cluster heads meeting. So for both primary and secondary schools. So we've introduced that to, we've been on the board with an introduction to the scheme. So the heads understand it. They're getting it out via their leaflets to the schools. So I don't know, they use WhatsApp, and they also have newsletters. So it's going in all schools' newsletters. So we're doing as much as we can from a school's angle. But also there'll be social media, obviously stuff on our website. It's been sent out to youth groups and other groups that may be of interest. So we're doing as much as we can. We can't get the actual names and addresses of people with kids on free school meals. That information is not available to us as a local authority, so we can't directly write out to them. So everything generally has to be done via schools as much as we can.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Are you okay with that, Colin? Right, okay. Councillor Green?
Yeah, just a brief follow-up on that, if I may. Does that go to all schools right across South Ribble?
That I'm aware of, yes. Yeah, including the special education and needs schools as well.
Councillor Unsworth?
Thank you. I think you've mainly answered my query, but I just wondered, on that same issue, it says that you can that the actively support people that can't book online. I just wondered if you could give us an example of how they do that.
Well, again, they can go via schools, so they can speak to the schools. If they can't book online, the schools will help them book online, which we've spoken to the heads about. But also, we've put some information through, so they've got a phone number to ring that we can support them through, and our officers can book if they ring on the phone number onto the sessions.
Thank you.
Councillor Lomax, question 4.
Thank you. Is there any data or information available on any impact of antisocial behaviour or community safety issues as a result of the programme?
Thanks, Chair. I have not been provided with any negative information back, but we'll look into it and we'll provide that data. But I'm not aware that we have had any problems, Chris, to be honest with you.
There is also positive to that question, which I would also say to look at. Don't always look at the negative, but the positive of interaction with our young people.
Yeah, we didn't, Chair, sorry, through you, Chair, we didn't receive any negative comments back from our community during last year's exercise, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Walton. Question 5.
I really commend that the report says that no child is turned away. And as I know from examples, there are many children who are not in receipt of free school meals, but would really benefit from anything that's provided for us. So do we have the resources and capacity for all the young people in South Ribble to access the programme, as we might not know the actual numbers at this particular moment?
Thanks, Chair. So again, a very valid question, that, Karen, is that we're not, we believe we have. We've certainly got the financial resources, because if you remember, we've supplemented the scheme already through the budget. But we've got a very experienced team and teams working out there with the local community. I know Jen, and they're overseeing it. We're clearly getting the bookings now. But what I can say to the committee, if resource does become a concern, we will deal with it. There'll be no child left without summer activities that wants them.
That's good to hear. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I thank the officers for all the work that you've done on this programme? And the report is a really good report, and it's testament to the excellent work that has been done. So please pass that back on behalf of all my colleagues. Jennifer and Councillor Foster, I'm going to give you a magic wand. And if you had that wand, what more could we do to actually improve the programme?
Holidays, we've got the Christmas holidays and the Easter holidays. So what happens on the other half terms, we've got February half term, October half term. And I was going to speak to him about, as a local authority, if we could extend it to those periods as well, if there was funding available. Obviously, he's on holiday at the moment, so he hasn't got back to me, but that's a discussion I'm going to have with him tomorrow, if we could extend it to other weeks where the children are off.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I suppose, I'll be careful here not to be political, but the decisions that council have made along the lines of the leisure local and the big investments that we've made across the borough in not just the leisure centres, but also the additional schemes like Lost Call Academy and all the other areas, gives us availability now of resource across the board. So this year there are far more premises, if that's one better, and staff directly available to the council to supplement Jen and the team as demand dictates. And again, because we own those resources as well, because they're in-sourced, a lot of them as well, the leisure centres, there's not a direct cost to us to ask the staff to support that, where in the past there might have been through the private sector. So I think, Michael, we're in a really strong position. But as I say, I would like, as Jen says, I would like to see this every single school holiday, we need to be putting activities on within our facilities and our key stakeholder and partners' facilities, and it's something we'll most certainly look at.
Councillor Green.
Thank you for the reply. So if we were to roll something out for those 2 half-term periods, for instance, do we have an idea what the cost might be? And are we looking at internal funding from South Ribble, or are we looking at external funding from elsewhere?
I think we'd be looking to fund it internally somehow, Michael, because as you know, through the county council and the other government agencies, that there is an infinite amount of money available to us. But I go back to the last answer, because we own the facilities, because the staff work directly for us, we shouldn't be incurring a direct additional cost. Just to slightly, as the officers always do, they're brilliant at doing this. At times of need, they slightly re-roll. And the sports development team are wonderful at South Ribble, and our partners are as well. So we'll be looking to internally fund it, and it ties into our holiday hunger strategy as well, Michael, that we've already got funding for allocated within the budget.
Right. And did you have a broad idea of the costs for those 2 periods, please?
No, but I'm sure Jen will look at it. If she sent Mick an email asking to expand it, I'm sure there's some cost in there somewhere, because it'll be one of the first things that Mick will ask.
Yeah.
I can go and speak to Councillor Tomlinson.
Okay, I'll now actually bring in Councillor Buttery, who obviously has some challenge to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Does this apply to homeschooling children as well?
Yes, every child in the borough is entitled to come and use the facilities, as long as it might be more of a challenge for us to contact directly the homeschooling children.
What I mean. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that if they contact us that we're not going. Every kid, as I started out, Julie, every kid within South Ribble is encouraged and invited and is welcome to come to these sessions, regardless of what their schooling is.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll open that up to, any members not on the committee. Councillor Tomlinson, and then I'll take a question from Councillor Martin. Sorry. Keep wanting to call you Martin.
Thanks, Chair. I got criticised for not using the mic before online, so I'll make sure I do so this time. I think, first of all, really encouraged to hear how positive everybody is about this. It's not often we get total cross-party support for a scheme, so it's good to hear it. And I'm sure if Mick was here, he'd reflect back on how quickly we put in the holiday hunger scheme when we formed an administration here. The point I would make is that so much of the success of this is based around how we've embedded cultures, whether it is about community wealth building, for instance. We didn't go to contract all this work out to a private provider. We look to use the existing skills and resources we have in our community. The leisure local stuff that Mick's pushed really hard for has come in really useful, and I think it's testament really to having an administration that's consistent in what it's trying to achieve and knows what it's trying to achieve. And so when these opportunities come to do the really good stuff, you've got that infrastructure to hang it on. I think it's a great scheme. I'm not sure where Paul thinks we're going to find the money for it'll be 3 half terms, because there's 3 terms a year. So there'll be 3 half terms. But I'm sure if he's determined that we're going to do it, then we'll dig deep and find the money from somewhere.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reflect the comments my colleagues made, Councillor Tomlinson, with this. I mean, holiday hunger it was a big issue. It was when I think we all know people and kids when we were younger who went without food and things like that. And it's not pleasant. It affects them for the whole of their life if they don't get the proper nutrition and engagement early on. Councillor Buttery mentioned about homeschooling. We've noticed, looking at homeschooling, that there's a lot of missing children, so to speak. Not missing as in they've disappeared off the ether, but they're missing from school. And these are declared as homeschooling, or they're not being declared at all. So I just wondered if there's anything we could do to try and promote that, not missing children, but promote sort of the engagement of families who are homeschooling, so we can offer this service further. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Councillor Foster, or?
Yes, we'll look into it, Chair. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Although there's no members of the public here, so I'll move on. Could I please have the recommendations, Darren? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion for members to consider. The committee recommends and thanks the leader and director for attending and answering questions. The committee commends the programme and positive impact it has had on our young people and communities. The committee asks that further information be provided on any benefits and positive impact of the programme on antisocial behaviour and community safety in the borough, and the committee welcomes the reassurance that consideration is being given to extending the programme to other school holiday periods. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. Any comments from members on the committee? Yes, Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. I will support all those recommendations, but I'm just minded of the interesting comment that Councillor Martin has just made regarding homeschooling. I'm just wondering whether we could implement something along those lines as well.
Yeah, shall we add that to the list? Yeah, thank you for that. Add that to the list. Okay, moving on to item 9. Members are asked to note the urgent decisions and review the reasons where call-in is waived. Okay, is that okay? Any comments on that? No. Okay, so we move on to item 10.
Sorry, Chair, I've got a comment about it.
Councillor Walton.
The urgent decisions, there seems to be a pattern of these urgent decisions being made, and I think we have asked for other authorities to give us some figures about this.
Yeah.
You know, the decisions are being made due to what are funding timescales or the date of ending of contracts. But surely these dates should have been known beforehand and should have been dealt with or before an urgent decision was made. And so they can't be called in for whatever reason because the mayor's made the decision. So is there capacity issues with the officer? Are they under too much pressure? But I am quite concerned of the number of these urgent decisions which have a similar pattern to them.
Yeah, okay, I get that. Darren?
Thank you, Chair. The information in comparison with other local authorities, that was an outstanding matter from the Matters Arising sheet, so that information will be made available to the committee. Since the committee started looking more closely at this, the number of urgent decisions has actually fallen quite radically. So hopefully that's a pattern that will continue. One of the big things that I know the committee were very concerned about was around the waiving of call-in. And you'll notice there are just 2 waiving of calling on this sheet, and it is basically where the government has basically passported money to the council and given us a very short period of time to actually be able to spend that money, and if we didn't spend it we would lose it. So all the checks and balances were put in place to make sure that decision was taken, but we will continue to work to make sure that urgency is only used as an exceptional matter, and hopefully the trajectory of the number going down will continue, and any urgent decisions will be reported in the usual way to the committee, so you'll be able to keep a close eye on it. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Councillor Green, and then I'll take Councillor Tomlinson, he just comes to the table here. Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just briefly, if I may, I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Walton's comments. There have been far too many. There always will be a reason for an urgent decision being necessary, but there's just been too many, and that has caused me concerns. But I welcome the assurance that Mr. Cranshaw has given this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Tomlinson.
Thanks for your indulgence, Chair. And I just want to push back on that really a little bit about this perception that there's been too many urgent decisions without anybody formulating what is the correct number of urgent decisions. A lot of the urgent decisions, as Mr. Cranshaw said, certainly during COVID, were about us getting money from the government to pass on to local businesses or people who were struggling with a very tight time frame that didn't fit with the corporate diary. So we get some money from the government, we've got to get it out in a month. There isn't a council meeting or a cabinet meeting in that month. And so if you're going to get that money out, then you have to take an urgent decision. And I think certain people on this committee won't be pleased to hear that just this week, there's been an urgent decision taken by the Mayor and yourself, I believe. And again, there's exactly the same thing. Money coming into the council that needs to be got out in the community, and there just isn't time for the executive decision-making process to go through. Ms Granshaw's quite right that the number of urgent decisions has fallen significantly, and that is because that type of money coming in has fallen significantly. So we can get back to a more normal way of working, where we're spending our own money that has gone through that process of being part of the budget. We all understand it, it's in the forward plan. We all know when the decision's going to be taken, and it goes to Cabinet and Council. So in pushing back on that perception and trying to give some context as to why it's happened, I do agree with Mr Cranshaw that I would expect there to be significantly less urgent decisions being taken than there were, say, this time last year or 18 months ago.
Right, okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Tomlinson, and the points are noted, and we will hold you to watching that level of performance on urgent decisions reduce. Thank you. Now, any further comments, questions? No. I'd like to move on to item 10. As I've already done, I've welcomed Lou Jackson to the committee, to joining us, and we're grateful for your membership. If you'd just like to just say something, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I welcome my appointment onto the Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee. The thing to report tonight is the meeting takes place at 10:30 tomorrow morning. So hopefully next time I come to scrutiny, I'll have more to say.
Yeah, we look forward to that, to your report. Thank you. So, item 10, meeting and trainings attended by the Scrutiny Committee members. So, as you're all aware, we did have a training session with Dr. Steph Snape on the 14th of June, and there was also an excellent, I believe, mop-up session by Mr. Cranshaw, which was much appreciated by the councillors that attended. So it's great to have that continuing training, because there's always new stuff that you can learn, even if you've been doing something for a long time. Cabinet Forward Plan. The Cabinet Forward Plan is included so that everything that might be of interest to the committee can be flagged. Any comments on that? No. Okay. Sorry, item 10D. Members are asked to discuss and agree their forward plan, and in particular the scrutiny reviews they would like to undertake, and to invite volunteers to join the task groups. I'll now hand over to Darren. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Following the prioritisation at the scrutiny workshop a couple of weeks ago, the forward plan has been populated to reflect the items that you'd like to see, and some leeway has been built in so that you can consider new items that perhaps might not be on the horizon at the moment. But each year the Scrutiny Committee usually chooses 2 topics for a task group, and I know informal discussions have taken place, and you would like a task group on housing associations, and also one on housing developers and their way they are tackling climate change and adopting environmental practices, and that may also link into other aspects of planning and that aspect of things. So tonight it'd be great if you are still minded to agree that those task groups are set up, and if there are any volunteers, that would be great. And the first meetings are generally to scope and get the things right for you and the committee.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. With regard to the second one that you mentioned about planning process, I just think the scope needs to be a little wider than just environment and climate change. As important as that is, there are some other aspects as well that may need to be looked at, and I'm happy to volunteer to sit on that one.
Councillor Thelborn and then Councillor Walton next. Thank you. Councillor Thelborn.
Darren, I'm happy to sit on the second committee.
Councillor Walton.
Yeah, I'd like to sit on the housing developers. I've got an interest in planning because we've got lots of planning issues in my ward.
Any other volunteers for The other committee. Councillor Jackson's comments. Councillor Unsworth.
Sorry, yeah, happy to be on the planning work task group.
Yeah, do we have enough?
Yep, that's great. Just scoping will be really key for that one, because obviously we wouldn't want to tread on the toes of the local plan member working group or planning. So we've really got to keep it at a strategic scrutiny level rather than getting involved in the detail of development, which is obviously the planning committee and other aspects. So the scoping of that will be really key, that we don't tread on toes and what you do adds value and is kept away from the mainstream planning process.
Councillor Jackson.
I'd be interested in the one with the environment, that involves the environment.
Yep, that's right. So if we have the focus on that one, get that task group up and running, and later in the year, perhaps we can start housing associations, because there might be different ways of scrutinising that, whether it be a half day, short, sharp scrutiny, or it could be a workshop, or it could be a Q&A. There's different ways to scrutinise housing associations.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, and then I'll take Councillor Green.
Yeah, just to say I'd be happy to sit on that and participate. Housing association.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. When we've talked, I mean, the one on the housing associations has been long on the back burner, so to speak, because I think this started, I think it was Councillor Trafford that first raised this pre-COVID pandemic. And so that shows how far it goes back. But I think we did talk about bringing the public in and the tenants, so that they have an opportunity to raise any issues, not specific local issues just to them, but the wider issues across the board, which we can learn from. So if there can be some public involvement in that one in particular, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good point. Councillor Trafford.
Could I just provide thank you, Councillor Green, provide a little bit of background for Councillor Jackson's benefit on that, if that's all right, because of that, it was prior to Councillor Jackson even being a councillor, and me being somewhat naive and it's worked, is I started being a councillor in 2019, and all I got emails about was residents living in properties run by housing associations that you wouldn't let cattle live in, and having people living in squalid conditions. So I brought that to scrutiny, said, can we look at that? And then we chose not to do it because we couldn't have the public in for that reason. And we wanted to make that a real scrutiny grilling event to make sure that it's clear that we set certain standards on how we let people live. So that was the background for that. By the way, it goes without saying, I'd be more than happy to be involved with that, but I appreciate there'll have to be political balance and so forth. So however that works, that's fine. But that was just for your own benefit. I just thought I'd raise that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Trafford. That benefited me as well. Thanks. Do we have any other comments? Councillor Felborn.
For the forward plan, can we look at transport in general for the borough? That's possible, Darren.
Would that consider that?
Yeah, we'll add that to the list. Thank you. Other comments from councillors on the committee? No, I think that's it then. It's a wrap. Thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you.